Hello, co-opers and listeners, and welcome back to the Co-opcast, the official podcast of the UCHA Co-op. I'm Adrian Acosta, and today I will be your host for this special episode. Our guest today is Joseph Murphy. Joseph is a second-year PhD student of sociology at UCLA, and he joined the Co-op in the summer of 2020. Hi, Joseph.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So the first question I wanted to ask you is just, how did you learn about the co-op and how do you like living here?
So I'm like the third link in a chain of students coming to the co-op. So first, also a PhD student in geography, was here, living here last year with Brian Zadie, who ended up being my roommate. So she recruited him back in January of 2019. We had already planned on rooming together after our first year at UCLA. And then since he moved here, I decided to come with him. So I moved in summer, in August last year.
Interesting. So this sounds like it was your first choice when coming here for UCLA. You already had a plan on where you live?
Well, this is my second year. So my first year I was in grad housing, and grad housing is super expensive.
Yes.
It was like when I was there, it was like $1,580 a month. And now we're here and it's like $600 a month. So I'm saving like $1,000 plus there's the whole food thing. So it's like $1,200 or $1,300 really that it's like we're saving.
Right, exactly. It makes a really, really big difference.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you more about your experience at UCLA as a grad student. But first, I'm wondering what brought you to UCLA for grad school specifically? Did you choose UCLA over other schools, or what was your decision in coming here?
So I chose, let me say this. I applied to like 8 schools once I got my undergrad, which was also in sociology at Clemson. So I applied to UCLA, I applied to Wisconsin, Madison, I applied to Notre Dame. And then I wanted to, actually, I guess that's the interesting story here. So like, I wanted to also apply to Stanford, but at the time, like I couldn't afford to apply to both Stanford and UCLA. So I had to pick one, and I just happened to choose UCLA over Stanford, which made me like, I mean, I'm sad about like what could have been, but honestly, I think being here was probably the best thing for me. So yeah, I applied to a bunch of schools. I got into 3 PhD programs. I got into UCLA's, I got into Wisconsin's, and I got into Notre Dame's. So I visited Notre Dame and I liked it a lot. But when I came to UCLA, like I just felt like the faculty here, like it was a much greater pull factor. Besides like the glitz and glam of living in Los Angeles, I'm from South Carolina, so like my hometown was 7,000 people versus like moving here where it's like several million, second most populous city in the nation. It was a big change. Anyway, besides that, the biggest thing was just like the pull factor of my the person who ended up becoming my advisor and a couple of other people in the department who were just like giving me really good advice and just seemed a lot like they wanted me. So before I accepted the offer here, they actually recommended me for a fellowship that I ended up getting, and that was called Competitive Edge. It's this like program for underrepresented minorities in basically in PhD programs. And that's where I ended up meeting Brian, who is my current roommate.
I see. So did you also study sociology for your undergrad major, or how did you end up in sociology?
That is a long story. So, and this also ties into like why I research what I research. So I grew up as like a working class kid. I'm a first generation college student. I'm Black, poor, all that stuff. I'm a part of a bunch of minorities. Anyway, so while I was going up in school, I wanted to go to one college, Clemson, for psychology. Actually, I wanted to go to a different college, Winthrop University. It's another school in South Carolina. I wanted to go there for psychology, but my calculus teacher in high school, she suggested that because I was good at calculus, like I had A's in the class or whatever, that I try and do engineering because, like engineers make lots of money. They've got good job security and all that stuff. This was back in like 2011. So it was a couple years after the Great Recession. So like employability is a big thing. So I decide to listen to her. I go to Clemson. I try and do engineering, but like I hate it. I hate chemistry and I hate biology and I hate physics. I really hate physics. So I was like, I can't do this. But I had like gotten a bunch of scholarships that paid my way to basically stay there and do engineering. But like it was killing me on the inside. It was killing my soul.
I mean, let me just say, as someone in engineering, I hate it too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll let you continue.
Oh yeah. So like I was feeling really bad, and I was just like, well, I can't see myself just doing something that I hate for the rest of my life for the sake of money. So I decided to switch to psychology, which is the major I originally wanted to do. But at Clemson, their psych program is mostly focused on like business applications, like industrial organizational work, which is not at all what I was interested in. I was more interested in like clinical psych stuff. So none of that really helped improve my mental state any. So I ended up having to medically withdraw from the university. And because, like I said before, I was low income, I basically couldn't afford to seek treatment. I couldn't afford therapy. So I was basically out of school. I worked at Walmart for like 6 months. That didn't work out. I had a suicide scare for a bit. That might be a bit much for your listeners, but let's just say that I wasn't in the best place mentally. So I ended up going back home. I stayed home for a year. And then I got a job doing transcriptions with this online transcription service called rev.com. So with that service, basically people get to upload audio recordings, kind of like this one. And then you have somebody transcribe it for you to just like type out whatever people were saying. So I did that for a while, and I did a bunch of transcriptions for like education research that was being done. I actually ended up doing a research project for a grad student that I ended up working with again once I came back to Clemson. So doing all of that work, transcribing the education research, made me realize like, man, I really like school and I really like education. It's important to me. So doing that job gave me enough money, and then saving money by staying home gave me enough money to be able to like see a therapist. I got better. Therapy is good. You should do therapy if you can. Anyway, so then that happened. I was able to get back to the university. And so I thought like I wanted to do social work, because being like unemployed, being as poor as I was, like struggling to make ends meet and all that stuff, I was like, well, I want to be somebody that can help these people. But Clemson doesn't have a social work program. So the closest thing they had was this concentration called social services, which was in the sociology major. So that's how I got to sociology. And then while I was in the different social classes, I realized like, hey, this is really speaking to me. Like sociology is basically the study of group interactions and like, why do people do things like socially? So I realized that what I was interested in wasn't like this micro scale, like trying to help individual people with their problems, but trying to address these problems at a larger scale. And so I had always been told growing up that like, you work hard in school, you get to a good college, you get a degree, you can do anything, or at least you'll have like a good job and you can, be in the middle class or whatever. My recent education has sort of problematized that idea, but like I still like value education, if for nothing else, like for its own sake. I think that it's valuable. Anyway, that's a very long-winded way to say that's how I got to sociology from engineering. And then while I was at Clemson, I participated in education research. And that education research, helped prepare me for a graduate career. Like doing ed research made me realize like, oh, this is what I want to do for a living. So like the project that I was working on in undergrad, the main one, I was in a couple, but the main one was looking at factors impacting student selection into STEM careers and student math placement, particularly into calculus for like students who are majoring in STEM fields. So we had found that students who went to college not being calculus ready, that is, if they took their math placement test as a freshman, they didn't place into calculus 1, then those students were much, much less likely to graduate with an engineering degree. And so we were trying to look at the different factors for like explaining why that might be. And we went to a bunch of different schools, different 2-year technical colleges and 4-year schools, 4-year public schools in South Carolina. And we realized that there were like these big differences between the students who attended the 2-year schools and would transfer to a 4-year school and the students who came straight from the 4-year school or who went straight into a 4-year school. And then one of those big differences ended up being just like talking with guidance counselors. A lot of the students at the 2-year schools felt like guidance counselors were really ignoring them, or that their only focus was getting them out of high school and not actually helping to prepare them for their careers. Whereas the students at the 4-year schools, they felt like their guidance counselors did do that, but they thought that the guidance counselors were either inept at the job or they didn't really rely on the guidance counselors, because most of the time these students weren't first generation, they were continuing generation. Their parents had gone to college and they were able to basically rely on their parents' social capital, that is, or cultural capital, that is their knowledge of the culture of college, the things that college institutions value, to be able to get into and finish like a college degree. So that's what led me to research, basically like expanding access to higher education, because I think that it's not fair that only people whose parents have gone to college should be the ones to reap the benefits of a college education.
So when you came to UCLA, did you see yourself following the same, did you identify someone that did research in a very related area, or how has your research interest evolved from going from undergrad to grad school?
So when I was looking for grad schools, and if there's anybody listening who wants to go to grad school, this is something I would recommend. You like take a look at all the schools that you're interested in. More importantly, look at the faculty that are there and see if there's anybody who's doing work that you're interested in. Like, it doesn't have to match your interest exactly, but if there's somebody who's like, if you're interested in education, like I am, you're not going to want to go to a school where nobody's like studying education. Or like, I'm interested in higher education specifically, so I don't want to go to a place where the only education research is being done at like the primary school level or something like that. So the schools that I ended up picking to apply to were places that had more than one faculty member that was doing research that was interesting to me. If they either had done research or was currently doing research that I thought was interesting. I also tried to pick places with younger professors so that I don't have to worry about them like retiring halfway through the program or whatever. But I think that one is a smaller concern.
Okay, so that kind of brings me to one question that I have, someone in a more mathematical field. So how exactly, or what are the kinds of research methods, or how do you do your research in this field of sociology? Does it involve a lot of statistics to reach conclusions, or a lot of more, I don't know, like just personally interviewing some of your research subjects?
So yes, sociology is very broad. We use both qualitative and quantitative research methodology. Yeah, it also depends on like what your area of focus is. So like one of the research areas that I'm interested in is stratification, or like how exactly is society structured so that some people are on top and other people are on the bottom. So that field is very like quant heavy. So we do a lot of statistics. We'll use like, you've got your basic stuff like your general linear models. Then you'll have like more complex stuff like machine learning, network analysis. There's a lot of different ways to look at that. But yeah, for me personally, I'm planning on doing a mixed methods project. So my master's, the thing that I'm working on right now, I'm looking at, I'm doing an event history analysis of students' risk. This is in air quotes. That's just the terminology, risk or hazard of going to college. Looking to see like if talking with certain institutional agents, that is people whose job it is to like help students through school, like guidance counselors, teachers, principals, and the like, if talking or engaging with those people makes students, particularly first generation students, more likely to go to college. And so I'm interested in doing, this past fall I did, spring, winter and spring, I did preliminary analysis, doing just your basic like logistic regression, studying the differences within the first generation student population about like who is more likely or less likely to go to college, considering demographic information like race, gender, sex, parent income, that kind of stuff, as well as school context. So like if your school offers AP classes, or if you have, if they help you with like filling out the FAFSA, that kind of stuff, as well as individual level factors, like if a student is involved in SAT, ACT prep, that kind of stuff. And from that, I found some interesting things, just like compared to students who didn't talk to their guidance counselors about financing college, students who did talk to their guidance counselors about like how to fund college were like 79% more likely to go. But talking with guidance counselors, talking with teachers, talking with anybody about anything else besides funding college didn't actually help first generation students get to college, or at least become more likely to go to college. Yeah. And it is interesting because it's like, you would think like one of the roles of a guidance counselor is to help prepare students to go to college. So like, why is it, at least for the first generation student population, that only going to, that only talking to them about how to fund college is what matters?
So I want to bring up something that I was just reminded of. So I recently heard about this study in another podcast I listened to about economics, and they were talking about a study where about for FAFSA, which many, at least American students fill out for financial aid for college, that what they looked at was the difference between just increasing the amount of money that you give to students filling out this form versus just simplifying the form. And what they found was, I thought was kind of surprising, that I think it was something like doubling the amount of money that students were given versus just simplifying the form. By just simplifying the form, more students ended up enrolling in college than just giving them more money at the end of the form. So this just made me think a lot about how like where are what are the areas where the incentives matter. So it seemed to me just that like giving people more money alone is not enough, but like just reducing the friction between the stage of high school to college, and like reducing that barrier. In this case, one barrier being like, how long does it take you to fill out one of these forms for financial aid? Like that just makes a really big difference. And I thought, yeah, I'm a program like giving people money to go to college, I think that's great, but that costs money, and doing something so simple as just simplifying a form makes a really big difference.
So I will echo that. Yes, like filling out the FAFSA was hard. I remember I had to do it, like I had to figure out how to do it myself my first year. I didn't have a school that like helped you prepare a FAFSA.
Right.
That was a survey item on the data set that I'm using. for the master's. But yeah, I would say you have to think about like, why is it that like I think you have to think about the fundamental assumption here about like giving students more money versus making the form simpler. So like by giving them more money, you're just assuming that people aren't filling out the FAFSA because they're not going to get a big enough reward. But simplifying the form, making more people apply, that suggests that the issue itself isn't with like the financial incentive, but with the ease of use. Like if you don't know how to figure out the FAFSA, then it doesn't really matter if they are going to offer you $1,000 or $10,000. If you can't figure out how to file the form, like you're not going to get anything. But this also like reflects what I was saying before, like this sort of cultural capital, this knowledge that you have about how to fill out these sorts of forms. And that's something that people generally from more privileged backgrounds, continuing generation students and the like, are more likely to have.
So one last question I just wanted to ask you was about your future plans. Where do you see yourself going in your career after UCLA?
Well, I have been told that most graduates of the UCLA sociology program tend to end up teaching at other like UC schools. So maybe I'll end up at a UC, maybe I'll end up at a CSU. But that's funny because my friend was texting me this morning, literally asking about like, what would I do if, well, I guess he was asking if I didn't get a tenure track job, but regardless, anyway, the plan is to hopefully land a tenure track job. If that doesn't happen, I mean, I'll probably go into a postdoc. And then after the postdoc, I will, again, try and get a tenure job. If that doesn't work, then I will most likely try and work with the Department of Education. So like there's an office in the Department of Education called the Office of, what was it? Civil Rights. Yeah, Office of Civil Rights. And so it would be cool working with them to produce statistics on like stratification in education. That would be, like, I think that would be pretty enjoyable. If that doesn't work for some reason, I can also think about like maybe working for a think tank somewhere in like California or in DC. That might be like another good option.
Great.
But yeah, that's what I've got for now.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us for today's podcast.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a great day.